Hey guys, welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today we have a great episode in store for you, all about mindset when you're injured. It's a topic that's come up for me and a few clients recently. The psychology of being injured is super important and can have a huge impact, not only on the speed of your recovery, but also on your life outside of the gym. So today we're going to go into a few tips and tricks and some general advice on how to manage the psychology of your injury, and might be helpful for you if you're currently injured, somebody you know who is currently injured, or your clients or athletes. But before we get into it, as always, a quick thank you to our show sponsors, thetrainingstimulus.com. Please check it out if you're interested in learning more about movement mechanics. wit-fitness.com. Please use discount code LL15 to get 15% off your purchase. And Hytro, use discount code LL20 to get 20% off your blood flow restriction apparel. Right, let's get into it. Rob,
Yes.
injury psychology.
Yeah, I mean, I've been injured many a times. I know you have. I've had clients, and it's always been whatever. Doesn't matter how different the injuries are, we all go through the same spiral. And whenever I've spoken about it, I find it's really relatable to, like, the Alcoholics Anonymous, the dealing with death. You go through the blame, the acceptance, and all that stuff. So you go through your cycle, no matter what it is. And I think that's kind of like the first point of call, because I think when you do get injured, all you think about is like, fuck, what did I do? Why did I get injured? Oh, why is this happening to me? And it's like that's that annoyance and that denial, and just like, oh, this shouldn't have happened to me. And it takes a little bit to kind of just have a moment to actually step back and think, right, fuck, okay, I'm injured. What the hell happened? How did this happen? Let me actually have a cool head to understand. But sometimes, like, it's amazing how long people dwell on the hot-headed part and stay
Yeah.
there and like, oh, this shouldn't have happened to me. Why am I always injured and stuff like that? It's one injury in like 6 to 12 months. Like, that's a good going. Like, you've done well there. Like, don't dwell on it. Like, it really is. And it's like it can be so easy to get caught up in the stress of it all, because it is.
Yeah.
It's extremely stressful. You've just got basically a cricket bat and smashed you in the side of the head and said, right, you got to stop now. You're fucked. So you're like, whoa, okay, now I'm done. So sometimes it's an opportunity for some reflection. What about you?
Yeah.
Where's your
I,
head at?
I think that's spot on. I think the first thing to acknowledge it is that it is usually accompanied by a lot of emotion, like the frustration, the anger, being upset and sad, maybe. And like you said there with the analogy of the stages of grief, I quite like that, in that usually there is denial at the start as well. Like, depending on the injury and the specifics of the injury, a lot of people will try to pretend that they're not injured, and they might not tell their coach about it. They might just be cracking on, in denial. And I think for minor injuries, that could actually be a helpful attitude, because they will just go away on their own. But if it's recurring, it's niggly, it's been going on for a significant period of time, you do need to accept the fact that you might be injured. And the first stage, like you said, is to get an honest appraisal of where you actually are. What's the reality of the situation? And that's where we need to focus on facts rather than emotion, because, like we always say, feelings are a shitty indicator of truth. So what do we know to be true? Like, are there specific movements where this pain, niggle, injury manifests? Is there actual structural damage? Like, how can we get a really clear picture of what's actually going on? And judging your your situation based off how you feel day to day isn't actually a great idea for that objective data. So having some sort of training journal or diary to track how it's changed over time. Like, if it's getting worse week to week, you know you need to really do something about it sooner rather than later. If it's slowly getting better, then maybe it's not so serious. But if you're not sure, this is where having a conversation with somebody else always helps bring you back down to earth, to actually, this has been hurting for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, is it?
Yeah.
Fucking hell, that's actually quite a long time. And maybe you get a bit of a reality check there. Also, if it's been going on for a little while, we did a great episode with Dr. John Houghton on scans. and we go into some detail on when it might be appropriate to get some imagery to understand what's going on structurally. Because if we're just guessing what's going on, that leads to that feeling of helplessness because you're not quite sure what your situation is. So how can you be sure on what you should do about it? Whereas I think unless you've got quite a good understanding of what is going on, um, yeah, you're always going to be taking a bit of a stab in the dark with how you manage it. So talking to an expert and potentially getting some imagery so you've got a very clear understanding of where you are today. Be step
Yeah.
one.
I think the denial side for me as well is when you know you're injured and you're like, right, I can do this to work around it. And then it's still not going. And then actually that thing that you could do to work around it, then you can't do that anymore. You have to maybe in a squat, you started out being able to have to squat to a bench, then squat into a high box. And it's, okay, I've got to try and goblet squat. Okay, really raise my heels. So I'm trying to say that. It's like, your back's fucked. Let's sort it. Let's be honest. Let's get on with it and let's sort it out. And
Yeah.
there's only so long you can find a different scale back until you're pretty much back at a body weight squat to maybe a very high box that you just have to take ownership and say, right, I'm done. Let's get this fixed. And that kind of leads on to our understanding what's in and out of your control, because we talk a lot in episodes about our controllables and our uncontrollables. And once you've identified how the injuries kind of happened, we can then make a plan. And I think that's what we kind of want from today's episode, is to kind of help you understand and create a checklist of sorts so that you can start making your way through it. Because when you do take out such an important day of most people's day, once you take away something that's really important in someone's day, like training, it can be really easy to fall into a very depressive state, to think there's no end to it, and just like, oh, why has this happened to me? Just like we kind of mentioned earlier. So by having this checklist, essentially we can go through it. So it's like, it's a plan. And when we have a plan, it feels like it's a training program. And a training program brings us back to normality. So then we don't go so far off the wagon where we think, oh man, I've really gone the other way. Because I know I've done it, like with myself when I've done my back in, and I was just like, oh, well, I can't compete now. 4 weeks later, no, it was 7 weeks total. So that was it. So 7 weeks out, I'd done my back in and managed to compete in a powerlifting competition and lift some of the heaviest I'd ever lifted within 6 weeks. And I couldn't move at that one when I'd done my back in. I was lying on the floor completely, basically like bedbound for a couple of days. My diet went to shit. I was a bit annoyed and stuff for like a day. But then I quickly realised, I was like, right, no, I've got 6 weeks. I have to sort this out, because it was my first comp. So let's maybe start out with our controllables, because they're a really easy thing that we can all take ownership of and start creating some processes.
Yeah, big time. So I think the first thing to do, once you've got that understanding of what your situation is, you should have some idea of what movements you can do, what you can't do. If you've seen an expert, then you might have some movement mechanics or rehab stuff to do. And that is obviously something massively within your control. You might have some training that's been taken off the table, which means you'll have some space to bring in this new stuff. And like you alluded to there, I think it's really important to treat this as training rather than that chore mindset of like, oh, I have to do this, like doing the dishes. It's still your training. So focusing on, this is the thing that's going to enable me to get back to the training that I love and have my body move in the way that I want it to. So switching that mindset from, an obligation to do your rehab or movements that you potentially don't like as much, to looking forward to them and treating them as something you want to progress and you want to develop, because they will ultimately make you a better athlete, is really, really important. And that means you can give them much more focus and you'll get much more out of them, rather than idly going through the motions, because you should, rather than because you want to. I think that reframe is super important and really powerful. And you see a massively different outcome from people who do them with one intent versus the other.
Yeah, I think past show guest Mike Lee actually put up a post the other day on Instagram, and I saw it and I was like, it's a really interesting point. It was kind of the not the analogy, but the idea that our warm up movements shouldn't just stay as a checklist, checkbox thing to do, and they should look to be progressed. And it's like, and having these certain things, they're cool. Okay, we should look to try and challenge ourselves, not necessarily just everything that you're doing in your warm up, but like say if you have I don't know, a kettlebell windmill in your priming movements, so not just always do it with a 12 kilo kettlebell, say that you're looking to actually maybe next week you might do a little bit more, so it turns into a bit of a training focus as well, so we can start to have a different framing of our movement prep. And I kind of like that because I was just like, it can become just a, like you said there, a chore rather than an actual to do. And I actually call it's actual training. And I get to do these bits. So yeah, I like that. But I think another thing as well is your recovery practices. And I think once you've kind of framed it in the right mindset of, okay, this is what's wrong, this is what I can do to improve, to get those things in place and to think the big picture, say, right, the better I can recover, the faster I'm going to get back to what I want to do rather than what I have to do.
Yeah, exactly. So when we say recovery practices, this is a very broad range of topics and activities that it could apply to, and it will be very situation specific depending on what your injury is. But it could be going for a walk, could be doing some swimming, could be some hot or some cold exposure, anything in that vein that's with the intention of looking after your body, giving it its best opportunity to heal and regenerate, are things that you can do. And it's almost more the intent behind them. Like, I'm going to look after my body as much as I can to give it the best chance of healing. I'm not just going to sit on the sofa moping, hoping that it's going to sort itself out. I think if you go into it with that mindset, subconsciously great things are going to start happening. And obviously there's loads of great research to show how improving blood flow massively increases your healing times. So that sitting and moping physiologically is worse for you than doing these recovery practices.
Yeah, I think when we had past show guest on, Gus, and he had his shoulder injury, and I know he's obviously seeing you from some certain mechanics to try and fix it from playing tennis and stuff. He focused on, cool, what could he do? He trained legs lots. He made sure any upper body stuff, he was making sure he was do like that he could work around. And when we had John Houghton on the first time, we was talking about, you might not be able to use, say, your right shoulder, but by doing those movements around the body, you are going to promote that blood flow. You are going to help with the recovery of that right shoulder, even if you're not directly using it. And even when we came back to like even more previous show guests of going to talk about hydro and blood flow restriction. So we have other things, we have other tools available which can really help, and it can be really easy to kind of just focus on what you can't do. And I think it's basically going to be the crux of everything when we keep coming back to it, but understanding what you can do and having those controllables in place that we think, right, we are going to get better and this is how I'm going to do it, just reframes everything.
Yeah, spot on. And in that same vein of like what you can do, there will be other training that you can do, unless it's a cataclysmic injury, which hopefully it's not. There's going to be some things that you can still develop and make progress in. If it's a leg injury, upper body stuff, it's an arm injury or shoulder injury, lower body stuff, like Rob said there. It might be a totally different sport or style of training, but it's important to focus on that forward motion. Like, you should be progressing towards something, even if it's quite random and tangential to your normal training. I think most people who love training are addicted to that feeling of progress. So if the brakes have gone on your standard training practice, you need to feel that feeling of progress somewhere else. And say all training is totally off the menu, that can actually be outside of physical training. You can learn something, you can progress in your other hobbies, maybe like music or languages. I think obviously it's not the same, and a lot of people wouldn't see it as a like-for-like replacement, which it's not. But I think from a psychological point of view, it gives you so much to keep your focus, on that forward motion. And when you're injured, the less time you spend dwelling on the negatives, the more your body is going to be, or your mood is going to be elevated, and you'll enjoy your life a lot more.
Yeah, which then leads on to as well diet, because
Mm.
again, it's like we all know, or we should know, that like poor quality foods increase inflammation in the body, and when there's injury, there's normally inflammation, localized inflammation around the injury, and probably a little bit more stress going through the body than normal anyway. So by adding a bunch of shit food into your diet and poor quality drinks and probably alcohol, numbing the pain essentially, it's like all you're doing is delaying the recovery even more. And
Mm-hmm.
as I said, like when I done my back in, it was like I remember, I remember once I could move, and I managed to get down to the local shop, and I just bought a big box of Crave cereal. Just went through the box, felt sorry for myself eating this box of Crave. Had a couple of beers that night, and I was just like, oh, I'm trying to make my back feel better so I could go to sleep, so I could actually sleep. Even though then obviously drinking affects your sleep anyway. But it was literally just one day. It was that thing, and then I did have a look at myself. I was like, don't go into that spiral, because I've done that before and it doesn't end up in a good place. And I turned it around. I was like, no, right, what can I do? Hence why I was then right the next day. Yeah, because I'd done it on a Saturday. So Sunday I was shit. Monday, back in the gym, I was like, right, I did some upper body and I did some light body weight back bending as much as I could, just to where I was comfortable. So just to kind of help my body say, like, no, don't now leave it there locked up. Let's get back into some movement and just progress that slowly. And it gradually got more close to a barbell, and then obviously it got to where it got to. But the diet was I had a decision, and I'm glad I made the right decision, because it can be so
Mm-hmm.
easy to make the wrong decision in that case.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great advice. And obviously, supplying your body with good macro and micronutrients is the raw material for repairing tissues. So if you do need to heal, having those coming in rather than a bunch of shit is going to help you regenerate those tissues much faster.
Yeah. So all of these obviously lead to the number one thing, which is attitude and mindset, right? You can control how you feel. You might not feel you can control. As you said, you can feel very reactive, and you probably will be at the start. But the more you stay in a reactive state of just like, this is bullshit, this is shit, this is why is this happening, all that stuff, it's like you're just gonna keep you're delaying the start of your recovery. So that is a number one controllable, which I think should probably be the number one thing on our list. That attitude
Mm-hmm.
mindset, because we've literally come back to that on every single point through movement rehab. It's in the attitude towards your movement rehab, your recovery, the attitude. So it is so important that you have the right framing to set yourself up, because the uncontrollables, they're brutal because we can't control them, and that's the horrible part. So thankfully there isn't as much out of your control. So like how long it takes you to heal is going to be very individual. How long it took my back to heal compared to say a client's back to heal, compared to your back to heal, like compared to all these other, like we're all going to heal in different ways, and we might not ever get better like fully. We might always be a bit subpar. So that is what it is. But we always have in that mindset of, right, okay, I'm working on what I can. So healing time is the number one uncontrollable.
Yeah, big time. And like we said at the start, it's very situation specific. Some tissues take longer than others to heal. Some individuals can heal much faster than others. So beyond what we said above about the recovery practices, your nutrition, sleep, all that sort of stuff that you can control, some things are just going to take as long as they're going to take. So getting frustrated about that doesn't help you. And like Rob said, I think a useful framing is thinking of negativity as a delay to your return to training. So almost catch yourself like, shit, that's a negative thought. That's a minute on my recovery time. You know
No,
what I
it
mean?
is
Like,
though, yeah.
people talk about smoking in that way, like every cigarette's X minutes off your life. I think negative thoughts should be thought of in that way as well. And like forcing yourself or finding a way to refocus on useful activities, useful thought patterns can have a massive, massive benefit to your injury recovery. And I think similar to that, the next point we have is an uncontrollable being the past. You literally can't change the past. So whatever happened, however annoyed you are about it, like I recently hurt my back because a bad tackle in a football match, and I was so pissed off, and I just kept running it through my mind, really frustrated and annoyed that this guy had put this bad tackle on me. And it's totally unproductive. It's such a
Mm.
waste of mental energy, and I can't change it. I'm in the situation I'm in. So, however I move today, whatever my pain's like today, this is what I can deal with. It's what I can influence. But that tackle, other than plotting my revenge for next time I play against him, there's nothing I can do about that past.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a common trap that a lot of people fall into, is just running through it again and again and again. Obviously, there might be things to learn, like if it's an injury that happened over time and there were things you could have done to prevent it, then learning from it is definitely something you should do. But that reliving it in an unproductive manner, I think, is a massive trap, which a lot of people waste time and energy spending on it.
Yeah, for me, this is probably something I've reframed my whole like mindset, and I think it does kind of stem from a lot of Stoic philosophy and stuff like that. Because like when you do dwell on the past, it is something that you cannot control because it's happened. And like an example, just a completely unrelated example, is I was out probably a couple of months ago. I dropped my phone. It didn't have a case on it, right? Dropped my phone, smashed all the back of it, right? And I'd had a couple of drinks, but I was just like, and I picked up my phone and I was like, oh, fuck's sake. And my mate goes, oh, I'd be pissed. I was like, but who cares? It's just a phone. It's now an inconvenience. Have I fixed it yet? No, I've just put a case on it now, so the glass is hidden. But it's like, for me, it really did mean a lot when I read the Serenity Prayer. So I'm not religious at all, but I got it tattooed on the inside of my arm because it's accept what is, let go of what was, and have faith in what will be. Because for me, that quote really pulls back to anything that happens in life. And like when I've had my back injury, it's like, cool, okay, I fucked it. It is what it is. And I've got to let go of that and now focus on the fact that my body will heal and get better in the amount of time that it needs. But when we do stay in the past, we're stopping the future progressing. So I think obviously, if you have had an injury, like I said, and I would say a couple of weeks out from a competition, the timing of things you can't control as well. And normally you're at a peak potential for injury when you're right near a competition, because you're essentially peaking your body to somewhere it doesn't really want to be or stay. So the slightest of things can play and wreak havoc on the body in a way you didn't really expect. So sometimes it just is what it is. And it sounds a bit woo at stuff, but for me, if something like that happens and I'm really close to competition, I was obviously not meant to do it. So when I got COVID right before I was supposed to do a half Ironman, I was gutted. But at the same time, I was like, I obviously wasn't meant to do that. And it reshifted all my mindset back into powerlifting and got me back into that. So maybe it wasn't the right time for me to do triathlon. So even though I enjoyed it and I thoroughly enjoyed all the training stuff, but that happened, which it probably does. It wasn't the reasoning behind it. I just got COVID and I was fucked with it. But for me, I framed it in that way, which helped me accept it and move on.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point, and quite similar to the point about the past. But timing, like Rob said there, when you are going into competition, it's when you are most exposed to injury risk, because generally the volume and intensity will be highest and you are asking the biggest questions of your body. But it is that uncontrollable thing. If you're injured, you're injured, and that's the fact of the matter. It's most likely at that point in time, but it doesn't change the fact of the matter that you are injured. So there's no point spending extra energy being extra frustrated because of the timing. It's just happened. Like, it is a thing that you need to deal with irrespective of when it's happened. It might be good timing in that it's, you've got maximum time before your next competition, so you've got loads of time to work with, and you can almost see that as a positive in that, if there's any time to get injured, now is the best time. You've got time to work on it and get maximally prepared before the next one. But like Rob says, if it's happened at, in air quotes, the most inconvenient time, it's almost like shit happens. Be upset about it. Let yourself be upset for a short period of time, draw a line under it, and then get cracking with the recovery.
Yeah, and then I think that kind of, because when you are injured, this one kind of, I think, falls as a bit of a hybrid between controllable and uncontrollable, and that's your mood. Because even though we know we can say control our mood, your mood goes through ups and downs throughout the day anyway. And even if you don't realize it, it's because you're not focusing on something, but you'll probably have a bit of a lull, just like normally, like with energy, it has a little bit of a drop off. Then it probably picks back up when you say maybe you're about to start something else, maybe you're going home or something. Your energy picks up a little bit because you're getting to go home. So it's very natural to have these peaks and troughs. But when you're injured, it's very easy to then focus on the trough, the down part, and say like, this is shit, this is all shit, I haven't felt good, when actually most of your day you've been fine. You've just then had this one bit. So when we say it's uncontrollable, it's just that's your mood in general, but how you react is your controllable part. So just understand it and say, oh, I feel a bit shit now. Yeah, okay, cool, let's find something that's going to make me feel better. Because you as we've discussed in all the controllables, we should be finding things outside of training or, you know, family members, friends, stuff to kind of pick us up if we are feeling a bit down. Because when you are feeling a bit depressive, you probably want to stay on your own. You want to stay in your own little bubble, and then it's that bouncing off you, always hearing the same shit. Oh, I'm shit, I'm in shit, and it's just like digging your grave, and you're getting further and further down. So the most important bit, see the silver linings, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the cliche catchphrase, every cloud is a silver lining, holds a lot of truth in this injury situation. There is always a hidden benefit. Like Rob said, with his injury, or sorry, getting COVID pre-half Ironman, it showed him how much he loves powerlifting and strength. And, you know, he took something from that experience. And at the very least, in an injury, you'll learn something about your body. You'll learn something about anatomy and physiology. You'll learn something about how injuries work. You'll learn something about potentially a weakness or an imbalance that you have in your body. So you'll come out of it with more knowledge, even if your body is slightly damaged. So
well, look how you got into this industry, into your speciality, right? Because you got fucked up through injury. The amount of injuries that I've accrued over the years, I've learned so much more. And then I obviously done your movement mechanics, a mentorship, mainly because I wanted to learn more, because it's like the body does break down. It's a very normal thing to happen. So it's trying to understand how to fix it again is a fascinating thing. And I think when you do actually have that passion for fixing things, which is why we've done what we've done, right? That changed our career paths, essentially.
Yeah. Exactly. So you might get a whole new career from your injury, which is a hidden benefit. But I think whatever your level of interest, looking after your own body should be interesting to most people. So you'll hopefully take that away from it. And you'll obviously then get some information on how you might improve your training for future. So what holes or gaps in your program might have created the situation that's led to the injury? Are there things you could have done to make you more robust against similar injuries in future? So your performance in future might end up being actually better as a result of the injury, because you build better foundations for your next competition or event. There's also the altruistic component to this, in that you might learn something that can help your friends or your clients or your family, because if they go through something similar in future, then you'll obviously have some really useful advice, or you might be able to prevent them going through something in future, because you can see that mechanism for injury building up in them, and you can get ahead of it rather than wait for it to happen before you do something about it. So I think there's lots of different things. Anything else you can think of on a silver linings front?
I think for me, one of the most important bits that I've found is taking the positive of then giving you an opportunity to build better foundations. Because for me, like, normally if something's gone wrong and it's because of a hole in your game potential, that's because you've missed something out at the fundamental level, that once you kind of scale up all the way. So like, when was the last time that if you done your back and you did a body weight squat with high quality movement, like you might just knock out some body weight ones, but you're not thinking about them, probably rounding, tucking under everything, right? You're not thinking. But when was the last time you did a high quality body weight squat and then scaled that up to a goblet squat, scaled that up to some dual dumbbell front squats? Then do you see what I mean? It's like it's so long since you've done that, and I'm culprit to that, because it's like you forget about the fundamentals that got you there, which is why every single training phase should always come back to some fundamentals and doing the bricks and mortar of the fancy stuff later down the line. And it's like it was when I done my back in the last time, and I was just like, it really reframed a lot because I was like, fuck, I've got a competition in a very short amount of time. How can I get back as quickly as possible? And it was literally my hands across my chest doing a good morning, like trying to bend over a little bit. And then it was right, okay, can I do a bodyweight squat? And I could. I was like, right, okay, I can do a bodyweight squat with my heels slightly elevated. Let me see if I can get a regular elevation. And I really did just try and find what was it I could do. And then it made me realize that just a lot of the fundamentals of I forgot to, I took for granted my movement because I was injury free. It was feeling good. But even though it was feeling good, that hip shift to the right in my deadlift, in my squat, the deadlift, just allowing that back to round slightly, realizing, excuse me, that my lower back, I realized that my midline and my core strength had weakened. So I was just like, all these things, it was then a bit of a reality check. Then, as we said about the checklist, I then gave myself some points to work on. So I think the building a bigger base one for me is probably the number one silver lining.
Exactly. And that can be fundamental movement patterns, like Rob said there. I love that question of when was the last time you did a really high quality air squat. I think not many people would be able to give you a good answer for that. But there's also other aspects of training that can be developed while you're injured. So potentially, low intensity zone 2 cardio, people might not have the time to develop that real aerobic base. And if heavy loading is taken off the menu, then you've probably got a lot of time, recovery capacity to put into that. So you might come back fitter, maybe a little bit weaker, but in an area of your game that you don't give enough time and attention to. So the opportunity, there's always an opportunity in every setback. And I think if you focus on that, it does keep you away from that downward spiral in psychology.
Yeah, I mean, we're two like PTs. We ain't psychologists or anything like that, but we've dealt with a lot of shit ourselves, and we've dealt with a lot of clients going through the same shit. And I think when we hear our clients saying the same things that are going through our heads, we realize we're all the same. There ain't nothing special about all of us. They might say we're all little butterflies, but big picture, we're all the same. We want the same connections. We want the same things. We all feel the same issues. Some people might not feel them as much as others, but we're all going to have a bit of a down when you get injured. No matter how quickly you're able to, say, mentally bounce back, we're all still going to be like, fuck's sake. Because it is what it is, right? Because it's annoying. So having our action steps of focusing on training, we've given ourselves 4 points here. So focusing on training should be program and schedule your rehab movements. Okay. So making sure we're having our plan in place. So we've either spoken to a professional or we know what we should be doing to make sure we can start progressing from day one back in the gym, whatever that might be, or back in your front room or wherever.
Yeah. I think that the importance of everyone who trains seriously will have their training in the diary as a fixed appointment that they know what time of the day they're going to be doing it. And I think you should treat your movement work or your rehab work exactly the same. So at this time every day you're going to be putting the time into it, and it's an appointment that you won't miss. I think expecting to fit it around the edges, just subliminally you're sending that message to yourself that it's low importance, that you don't want to do it, and you're not making time for it, which means you're not going to get the benefit from it. So having it in your schedule, programmed so that you can, what you're going to do like you would with a training program. You're not faffing around, just playing around and not making any progress in any particular direction, which I think leads naturally into the second point, which is another way of treating it like training, is to track your progress. So that can be reps and weight, but I think with injuries, focusing on things like movement quality, so things like range of motion, and also some subjective factors like pain, tracking those over time will help you get an objective understanding of whether the subjective is improving. So is your pain actually reducing over time, or maybe it's getting worse? Is your range of motion in a particular stretch or a particular exercise improving, or not really? That will help you understand whether you're doing the right things, but it's also invaluable feedback for your coach or physio or whatever type of therapist you're working with to understand whether the prescription is correct. Maybe it's too much too soon, maybe it's not enough and we need to increase the intensity, But unless it's like a training program, right? If you do some random squat program off the internet, unless you're measuring your squats and how heavy you're squatting, you don't know if it's working. Same goes for your movement work or your rehab work. Unless you're tracking it over time, like the rest of your training, you're just guessing as to whether it's actually having an effect on your body. So be as diligent with your and meticulous with your tracking as you would be for any other training, because at the end of the day, it is about getting better, whether you're going from injured to uninjured or from normal to fit. It's the same process. It's the body adapting. So make sure you're tracking it. Otherwise, you're just guessing.
Yeah, and I guess then staying active to the point of you're staying busy with what else you can do with the time. The fact that we've mentioned there about, okay, I might be able to do some rehab work or some, say, zone 2 cardio stuff, building an aerobic base, focusing on things you can do. And then if you're not in the gym, and because do you know what, I don't want to even be in the gym because my recovery stuff can be done outside, finding that and making sure you're keeping yourself occupied. Not to, because we're not trying to necessarily hide away from it and pretend it's not there, but it just takes away the focus as being the only thing you think about. And that's where, when we talk about then our last point of avoiding the spiral, the negative compounding effect of eating shit food, not worrying about recovery, thinking about it in a negative way, just like all these sort of things all interlink. And, for me, it can be really easy for us to say, and it can be easier said than done. But understand that anyone that's been injured has gone through this cycle in one way or another. Yeah. As I mentioned and alluded to a little bit before, we all get the same initial reaction, and it's just how quickly we bounce back from that.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really important point, that it's a really natural point to start a negative coping mechanism. So it could, like, a lot of athletes might turn to drink, might turn to drugs, might start playing video games really late at night, just as a way of distracting them from the depressing thought of how injured they are. And I think, like you said, it's easier said than done to just avoid those behaviors. But that leads to point 3 of staying busy, because there is going to be a bit of a void. If you love training and spend a lot of time on it, you're going to have free time. And what's the saying about the devil makes work for idle hands, or something like that? You want to use that free time or extra time for useful or positive activities. So spend more time with friends and family, maybe start a new hobby or put more time into your other hobbies, just so you don't leave it vacant for bad habits and just doom scrolling slouched on your sofa.
Mate, we are super positive people. This is what it's coming to sound like, isn't it? But I tell you what, though, all of this kind of reminds me of a quote where it was in Frozen 2. So if you haven't seen it, then it is a great film. But in Frozen 2, one of the opening scenes is one of the queen, the sister anyway, is talking to the snowman, Olaf, right? And Olaf in that one is quite a spiritual snowman at that point, because he's grown up a little bit. He's feeling a bit more aware. And the queen goes something just like, oh, everything in life is currently a bit hectic, but I really like it at the moment, but I know things are going to be different soon. And then Olaf goes, well, the only thing consistent in life is change. That is the only thing. So the fact you could be injured, you're going to become uninjured. You get uninjured, you're probably at some point going to get injured doing something, especially if you're doing something outside of the normal. Even just doing normal shit, you get injured. People just step off a curb and twist their ankle. Basically, prepare yourself for all eventualities. That's what we're getting to, and stay positive.
I think, I like that quote. Like, one of the only things that in life is guaranteed is change. And the situation is going to change. So making peace with the fact that nothing's constant. If you're uninjured, it's not guaranteed you'll stay uninjured. There's obviously things you can do about it. But what's all things will pass. There's another nice quote around that. But I think acknowledging that whatever the current state of affairs is, it is going to change somehow. There are things that you can do about it, and there are things that you can't do about it. But focusing on what you can do leads to much better outcomes, like in fact, but also in terms of how you feel about the situation. So bit of an emotional episode today.
Mate, we're
definitely not
stoics.
qualified to talk about.
We're stoics of today's times. I love it.
Yeah.
No, it's good
So
shit.
hopefully that was helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we really do hope it's helpful because we've dealt with these things. We know, as we've said, we've known clients. This is such a common thing to have to go through, and sometimes it is just hearing it from two random guys on the internet having a bit of a chat. We've had experiences, and that's what sometimes you need to hear is someone else has gone through the same shit as you, whether that's through injury or whatever in life. There's obviously an even deeper rabbit hole, which I don't think we should go into. But this is the thing. We're only qualified to talk about this because we've gone through it. So because we've gone through it, we can talk about it. So
and it's on the internet.
And it's on the internet, and you can talk about anything there, right? Can't you? You don't need to justify anything. So, right, we do hope you enjoyed today's episode. We hope you're not injured. And if you are injured, that hopefully some of these things that we've spoken about today was able to kind of give you a bit of a positive framing on it and ways to kind of come out of it the other side. And if you are injured at the moment and you do want to reach out to Ash or myself, please do. We'll be sure to try and give you some advice and help you where we can. And obviously in a qualified state to make sure that you do stay, that we stay in our lane. And we hope you did enjoy. If you did, please share. And if you do know anyone that is injured at the moment, maybe give this a little share to them and help them out, because we believe it will. So thank you very much as always for your time. We really do appreciate your ears every single week. And thank you for sharing with others, because we're growing. So science clearly working. So thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.